All right, time to play a little early to the party, late to the party. I'm skipping that party with one of our favorite recurring guests. Steve Ceruti is back in the building. All that and more coming up here on Green with Envy. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, it's your boy Will Ware checking in. How you doing? How you living? Riding shotgun today is my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, Greg Manakis. How's it going, man?
Can you salute if you're not a veteran? I don't know.
I don't know. That maybe that's a debate that we want to avoid. I don't know. But let's.
Well, I salute you and I salute Ceruti.
Thank you. There we go. There you go. That's the intro right there. We got our recurring guest, the knight himself, Steve Ceruti from the Russillo podcast, back in the building. What's going on, man? How are you doing?
Chilling. Yeah. It never ceases to amaze me how many people, like, no matter, we've been doing the pod for, I don't know, like 5-6 years, whatever. We've been doing something with Russillo for probably over a decade. And I get tweets every single week being like, dude, I thought your name was Sir SIR Rudy. And people are just always joining the pod late. We're always finding new listeners, so this is great. But it always blows my mind. So no, it would be way cooler if it was. But I am unfortunately not a knight of the round table.
I wonder what they think the connection would be, right? Because the only way that you could really jump to that is like, oh, there must be an inside joke that I missed. But to just jump to that without any connection just seems ludicrous.
And we never talk about it either. Like Ryan always says, like wouldn't we play that up more if we literally had a night on the show or there was a reason? But and the other thing too is like I'm not quite Big Dom from the Eagles game yesterday, if you guys saw that, as far as like Paisan Italian guys. But I'm very Italian. I'm not even remotely British at all. So I couldn't be further away from being a knight.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense on a lot of levels, but we're happy to have you back here, man. As always, we love when you join. And so, of course, there's only one place that we got to start with you, and that's with the second place Orlando Magic. 9-1 in their last 10, second place in the East. Like I said, have won 4 straight versus the Celtics. Just are the Celtics kryptonite. So let's start here. We're recording this the morning before the Celtics play the Pacers in the in-season tournament. It was the first year of the in-season tournament, but with all the good kind of juju around the Magic, do you feel like they got screwed a little bit in the in-season tournament with the way the point differentials played out in the last day?
I am like the last person who's a blame the ref guy or blame the system guy. Like I typically am like, it's your own fault, man. Like we can blame whoever we want, but at the end of the day, like you typically control your own destiny. And so I don't think they got screwed. I do think there's a clear disadvantage if you are not playing on the final day, because we saw it happen. All of these teams, the Celtics included. I'm not even mad at the Celtics. Like I would have done the same exact thing if I was in the Magic scenario. It is what it is. The Knicks did the same thing when they just blasted Charlotte, who were terrible. Then I had nothing to play for. The teams that know what they need to do to advance just do have a clear advantage. Now, the Celtics would have blown out the Bulls anyway, because the Bulls are probably the laughingstock of the NBA right now. But it would have just been nice if the Magic had known on the final day what they needed to do going in. And yet there's just like a different level of intensity on the last night versus the second or third game in the in-season tournament, because like the teams kind of like ease their way into it a little bit. I don't know that. So when we had some players that didn't even fully understand what the process was like. So I think not playing on that final day was definitely a disadvantage, but I don't think they were screwed by any means. I do think they're one of the best 8 teams in the NBA right now, and they should have been in the final 8, but that's not how the bracket worked out. And unfortunately, we'll have to wait till next year.
So your last game in the in-season tournament, was that the game against the Celtics?
Yeah, and the Magic were like, if you looked at Vegas, were heavy favorites to win the group, and I was like kind of surprised. I think they were like minus 350 or something to like win it, and it kind of blew my mind, because the Celtics, all they had to do basically was blast a bad Bulls team, and then the Nets just had to beat a pretty average Raptors team and there's like some weird beef between the Raptors and the Magic, at least from the fandom perspective. So I had no faith that the Raptors were going to help us out there at all. So I actually didn't think it was much of a slam dunk. I was earlier in the week. Russillo was making fun of me because I was sort of like changing my travel, because we're going to be in Vegas. I'm leaving tomorrow because Bill and Ryan are doing a live show there. And I was like, I got to change my flight and my hotels if the Magic make it and they make it to the final. Like I'm planning on leaving Thursday, but if I got to stay till Saturday, I got to stay till Saturday to watch the Magic. This is the most important Magic moment in the last decade. So I did get a little ahead of myself. But when I looked at the scenarios, I was like, oh, there's like a good chance they don't win this group and they don't make it. So I don't know. It was sad and I was bitter on the last day. I'm not as bitter probably as Florida State fans are today and missing out the college football playoff, but I was a little sad and a little annoyed.
Before we dive deeper into the Magic, are you going to get to go on stage for the live show?
I'm not sure. Like usually, whenever I do, so it's technically a Bill show. It's not a Ryan show. Okay. So, but Bill, whenever I hop on his pod, like for a couple minutes, so it's always like last minute. Like he usually doesn't give me a heads up.
I was gonna say, how caught off guard are you sometimes?
He's usually just like, it's Ceruti there. Exactly. And so I have like a mic set up here and like, luckily, it's kind of half on, but like I have to turn my camera on. I got to turn my mic on. I got to get it straight forward. So like, there's always like kind of like a weird delay. So that's probably what'll happen. Like if I don't think so, but if it is, Bill will be like, hey, Ceruti, come out here and answer this question. I'm like, great. Like now I'm not even remotely prepared. I didn't have any, I didn't have anything necessarily to say, but so TBD, I guess, is the answer there.
Quick question for you on some of the live shows that you guys have been doing, and specifically the Russillo ones. I feel like, listening to it, in podcast format and like seeing some of the breakout videos, has life advice overtaken because you guys get really good guests for these events that people are coming to live, but it still feels like life advice is the main central event of all these live tapings. Is that actually true, or is that me just making an inference that maybe isn't 100% accurate?
I think it depends on the show. I mean, the Chris Paul one, I think Kyle and I do a pretty good job, but I don't know that we're ever going to beat Chris Paul appearing at the New York live show, which was I don't know if we'll ever top that. That was one of the coolest moments, I think, in like the history of the Russillo pod. But your average one, like, I think a lot of people, because we'll do like a lineup of people who could ask questions too. Sometimes the Q&As make the pod, sometimes they don't. Sometimes those questions get a little bit weird, so we have to keep them out. But yeah, like I think, that's kind of like what people, they want to just kind of come and hang in person for what they've like for three guys that they sort of listen to and feel like they're friends with. So yeah. So I guess it just depends on the guest. I mean, McShay in the Las Vegas one we did with Ryan, he was great because obviously he and Ryan go back to like when they were in their 20s in Boston, trying to like figure out what their careers were before either of them were big at all. So they've known each other forever. So them telling stories about that was really cool. Todd talking about the draft was cool. We were originally supposed to we were there for the F1 race, but the timing kind of didn't really work out with some of the drivers there. They had like an event that night. But yeah, so like, I guess it just depends on which one, but usually life advice gets pretty rowdy. I will say it is very different doing life advice in front of like a live audience of like 100, hundreds of people versus just doing it in my basement right now. Like there's a level of like, you're a little bit gun shy. Like you're not quite sure if a joke's going to land.
Well, you're talking directly to the person asking advice, right? It's not like this anonymous random email that you're kind of trying to like figure out.
And on Zoom, it's like, if the joke lands, if it doesn't land, it doesn't really matter. Like I'll just get tweets afterwards. But this one, like if they don't laugh, like you're kind of in your own head a little bit. So it's kind of a different ballgame.
How much does seeing the person that's asking the question, like how much do you size them up and that affects the answer you're giving versus just seeing it written? You're not really sure if they've sent the picture, but if you're looking at the guy, you're like, oh, this guy's a fucking pipsqueak. Like I kind of have to adjust.
I'm not a fighter.
I'm not necessarily all fighting questions, just in general. You can size somebody up and be like, this guy.
Russillo definitely does that. Russillo definitely does that. I am in no way, shape, or form qualified to talk about any sort of like size stuff. I am 5'10", 155, 160, hopefully on a good day. So my size is very average to begin with. So I don't size people up, but I get it is different, like telling someone something straight to their face versus you like just some guy that randomly emails in that you don't have any connection with. So it's I don't know if it's better or worse. It's just different, and it's kind of cool.
Will, how often are you sizing people up?
Well, I used the wrong word. I didn't necessarily mean like sizing up. Like,
I thought you meant like can I take this dude?
Yeah, I used the wrong. I just more meant like, how sometimes like you just the way when you first meet somebody and they're telling you something and you're just kind of you're hearing their voice, you're putting it together. You're judging a book by its cover. Okay. Is like I feel like that would change the way my advice would be depending on now I'm looking at you. You're not just like you could you gave me your description. And that's, you could still just like hearing their voice and seeing them changes the way I think like my advice.
Right. It is helpful.
And that's more what I meant than
and
just
you
like,
also
can you take this guy?
You also might need maybe pick up on their energy, pick up on their vibe. Exactly. And it's like, oh, this person clearly has zero self-esteem, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe you're like a little bit more gun shy to Ceruti's point about like going too harsh on the critique or the advice, right? So yeah, I think that makes sense. But let's get back to the Magic. My bad for taking us on that that tangent.
No.
So what have you seen so far from this team besides just like are they still the top ranked defense in the league?
No, they dropped. I think they're. I looked this up before. I think they're fourth now, but I mean they're a few percentage points behind. Yeah,
it's them, Boston, Minnesota, right? They're all kind of in that.
Yeah, New York snuck in slightly above the Magic, but yeah, it goes T-Wolves, Celtics, Knicks, Magic.
Yep.
So who's been the guy this year? Is it Franz or Paolo?
It's kind of weird. I mean, Paolo got off to a weird start this season, and I thought he was. It was a couple things. I didn't know if he was being too passive, and just trying to kind of like let the game come to him and not necessarily just like taking over, which I think is admirable, but also sometimes I think that's what the team needs. And then on the other hand, I was like, I just don't know that they have enough shooting to like actually properly space him out and like give him, the ability to operate on the block and like kind of find space and get to the hoop and get to the foul line. And then like after like 5 games or so, like he just kind of clicked, and I think he just said, screw it. Like, I'm just going to kind of like be me and end up, attacking the basket more. I mean, he's been an incredible 3-point. He's the Magic best 3-point shooter this year, which is kind of mind blowing, because one of the things that, was a question about him was like whether or not he was going to be an insufficient jump shooter. And he has not been an insufficient 3-point shooter at all this year. He's shooting, I think, so, well above 40%. I think Franz is slightly better right now. And this has always been the thing, is like, I've not shut the door on who's on Franz being like the guy long term. Like, I still think that's realistic. I think it's more likely that Paolo is the guy long term, but I still think Franz can be it. But I think when Franz is good, this like Paolo's typically good like night in, night out. Like, he's going to give you what his numbers are, and he's just that skilled. When Franz like really like is on, they're tough to beat. They're a really hard team to beat overall. So I think he's kind of the difference maker, and he's been the guy that's kind of like the linchpin for basically whether or not this team goes or not. And the 9-game winning streak that got snapped the other night, like, he's been playing out of his mind. Like, he had like 4 straight 30-point games. Mm-hmm. He was shooting like 70% from the field, well over 60% from 3. Like, it was absurd, like absurd numbers. And that's not who he is like 82 games a year, but that's who he can be. And I think he could be a more efficient player than Paolo. So I think it's a lame answer, but it's like a combination of both. Honestly, the difference has been Jalen Suggs. Like, if you're going to ask me, like, of all guys on the roster, like Suggs.
You mean the new Marcus Smart?
I think he's potentially a better shooter now than Marcus Smart. Who knows?
Yeah,
I think, and he's also a little bit more likable, I think, than Marcus Smart at times. But I think he to me is the difference in this team last year versus this year. Like, they actually have like a legit number 3 guy.
Wow, number 3 guy. I've tuned in to see Suggs a little bit. I'm a big Jalen Suggs guy. Back in college, Will, you can attest to this. I was ready to trade it off for Jalen Suggs. I think I even advocated for trading Marcus Smart to try and get a chance to get Jalen Suggs. Suggs actually reminds me a little bit more of Caruso than Smart, or like a combination of the two of them, just like body type and all that. But I do think, with going back to the Franz Paolo thing, Franz appears to me from a very outside perspective to have less of that like alpha dog ego. He seems more of the connector facilitator type. So I think it actually makes a lot more sense. Whereas you compare that to Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, where they're both a little bit, alpha doggy in the way that they play. And, I think that's why there's
feels like Jalen's more though. Like, I think sometimes when I watch the Celtics, like Jalen, even if I don't want him to be that guy, he's that guy, and I think he has some of that more than Tatum does. Like Tatum, I know he'll drop like, what is it, like 40, 50 or whatever in a playoff win. But there's times when like he kind of just like disappears a little bit too, whereas like I kind of always know that Jalen's going to do something, whether it's good or bad. Like, he's always going to be there. Whereas like sometimes I think that's the difference between Tatum and like the real upper echelon of players, is just like, not that he doesn't have the mindset, but like sometimes he just kind of coasts and disappears in games. And at least Jaylen Brown is like, I always kind of know what I'm getting with Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, he does. Jalen does not coast. That's for sure.
Yeah. So but while we're talking about the Celtics, I want to talk a little bit about, I mentioned it. They've beat the Celtics 4 straight times, right? They feel like they are
bad matchup.
Yeah. They feel like the Celtics kryptonite. So, I'm curious, other than, Cole Anthony the other day saying that they're just amped up because of some ridiculous comment Eddie House made.
I was going to say the Eddie House factor cannot be overlooked.
Yeah. Him calling them the goofy club for getting excited about wins a couple of years ago in December. What do you see as their secret to why they're such a bad matchup for the Celtics?
Because they're gigantic. Like, I think they just, I mean, if you can, specifically that last game. I mean, they're bringing Jonathan Isaac off the bench to just say, "Hey, go make Tatum's life miserable." And he, this is what's crazy about this Magic sort of turnaround is, 3-4 years ago, we were looking at Jonathan Isaac as like the hope of the franchise. Like he was the guy. Like we were hoping could turn into a star. And that was obviously incredibly unrealistic. Then he gets hurt, and then he does all the off the court stuff, which we don't even need to get into. But if you're just asking him to be like the 5th or 6th best player on a team and just be an absolute insane defensive player, that's like a cheat code, like that. And he's like hitting shots too. And that's why I just never gave up on him because he's not making like a ton of money. I don't know what his trade value necessarily is. So I was like, I think this guy has legit all NBA defensive potential. Why would you just give up on that guy as like a role player? That's insane to me. So I think the size is just for most teams, like they're just, I mean, if you look at it, they go, if they're all healthy, like Wendell Carter Jr., 6'10", guy can step out and hit threes, play make a little bit as a center. Paolo, Franz, both 6'10", both guys can have the ball, move it, pass, whatever, play defense. And then, the backcourt is a little bit smaller, but if you switch things up and you like throw Joe Ingles in there, who's like I know he's older, but he's a big body. Jalen Suggs is small, but he plays like he's gigantic. And then, I said, you got the bench, Jonathan Isaac off the bench. You've got, Mo Wagner. You've got Bataze, who's been like kind of like a menace defensively as well. They're just way bigger and more athletic than a lot of these teams. And while they don't necessarily have Jalen and Tatum just yet, they have like 4, 5, 6, 7 guys deep who are all just absolute monsters on the court. So I think that's the biggest problem. And I think Porzingis solved some of that. Obviously, he got hurt in that game too, which I texted Bill, I think, during that game. I was like, as soon as Porzingis went out, it was like a layup line for the Celtics or for the Magic in that game. So I think that's it. Like that, we talk about these like rebuilds and, the future of the NBA. And, a lot of people talk about OKC. And I think the Magic have that, but they're just big. They're even bigger than OKC. So that's why I just think their roster and what their prototypes are for their stars is the future of the league. It's 6'10" guys who can handle and basically defend and do everything you want on the court.
I'm not kidding when I say this. I think that when the Celtics lost all those games to the Magic last year, they realized that they were too small and that the Magic were going to be a problem. And I think that's why they went out and got Porzingis. I don't know, like Porzingis obviously being 7'3" is like the upper echelon of the size in the league. Yeah. But I knew that, after that, they were like, we need to make some sort of change. We're too small going Marcus Smart, Derek White, Tatum, Brown, and Horford, right? That's just not big enough. Even Rob Williams, 6'8", 6'9". He's not like a huge dude.
And he's always hurt. So yeah.
And he's always hurt, as unfortunately this year he got hurt again. And that's really why I think they got Porzingis, is because of teams like the Magic. And then obviously the MVP of the league, Joel Embiid still being in the East, Giannis, and then Jokic on the other side. You're going to have to match up with them at some point. I don't know if Porzingis is the answer to match up with any of the behemoths, but just in general, being bigger on the court, I think it was huge to have another big to pair with Horford that theoretically would work with them. But yeah, I agree with you, dude.
Even real quick, like that was before Drew Holiday became available. That was always the plan, right? Like, let's go get, bigger. For all of those reasons that you just laid out. And then we kind of reverse course a little bit with the Drew Holiday trade and moving Rob out, just because it was unexpected that Drew Holiday was going to be there.
That's 100% the right move, obviously. Yeah.
It definitely is. But then it leaves us still a little bit more vulnerable to situations like the Magic because we don't have Grant and Rob to go along with the KP and Al Horford combination.
Yeah, I love the Porzingis trade. I know like people, obviously I didn't have any like emotional attachment to Marcus Smart, so I just look at him purely as an asset, and I'm like, I kind of think you probably got the best out of Marcus Smart, and I think we've seen that. And yeah, there are certainly risks with getting Porzingis, but I just like to me, Porzingis is an infinitely more valuable player like this year if he's healthy than Marcus Smart would be for the Celtics. So I love that trade for you guys.
Yeah, let's take a quick break here, and then we're gonna come back and play early to the party, late to the party, skipping that party.
Cool.
All right, so Rudy, we kind of gave you the rundown of what this game would look like in advance. But Greg, if you could kind of walk us through and set this up. And then Rudy, if you feel ready, you're a guest here. So, of course, we're going to give you opportunity to go first. But you also have the opportunity to defer and let one of us go if you want to get a feel for the game.
If you want to pull a Belichick, defer
set it up here. Half. Exactly.
I want the ball and I want to score.
So we're going to start with early to the party. So early to the party is something where you feel like you're still ahead of the curve. For example, last year, I predicted that the Magic would make the playoffs in the 22-23 season. So I would have been early to the party there. Kristaps Porzingis, I predicted at the beginning of the season, by the end of the season, everybody would look at him as the second best player on the Celtics roster. So Ceruti, what are you early to the party on right now?
Well, could I like, I want to retroactively take credit for something. And I want to just say Chet Holmgren in general, because like last year, I famously, infamously, I think it's fine to say now, but like I wanted the Magic to take Chet over Jabari and over Paolo. And I've said this multiple times. I think it all worked out for everybody. Like I think Chet is the perfect fit at OKC, and I think Paolo is the perfect fit for what the Magic need and want right now. That doesn't mean I wouldn't want Chet or whatever, but I had so many people that and a lot of them were actually Magic fans that were like mad at me after the draft happened, because I was like, yeah, I still would have taken Chet. I think Chet is going to be the best player in this draft. And, you know, then he gets hurt. And because Kev Clark and I did like this, it was like a live audio thing we did like during the summer league when Chet was like tearing it up before he got hurt. And we were like, oh no, did the Magic fuck this up? Like, like Chet looks incredible. Like this is what we were telling you. And a lot of Magic fans got really mad, being like, wow, you're judging too soon. Like he's not as good as Paolo. And Paolo had a good summer league as well. And obviously went on to win Rookie of the Year, so it was fine. But I would just like to say that I was very early on the Chet. I believe in Chet party. Like I believed in him then. I believe in him even when he got hurt. And I definitely believe in him now when he's probably going to win Rookie of the Year this year. And I think, I don't want to say that, like, because as I said before, I think both teams got what they needed. But I think this is going to be, between he and Paolo, going to be a really interesting discussion for many years to come about which guy is actually better.
So would the Magic be better if they had Chet right now?
I don't think so.
Chet, do you? Okay.
I don't think so. That doesn't mean that Chet won't be a better player, but I think the Magic needed like the alpha number one option guy. And maybe I overlooked that a little bit before the pre-draft process. Because I think of all three of those guys, including Jabari, Paolo was definitely that guy. He was the ball's in his hands. He's making the decisions. And so the Magic did need that. And so no, I don't think they're better right now. Maybe they would be in a few years, like depending, like if Franz really becomes like a bona fide all-star and, is like a real number one option. And then like Chet is like the number two piece. I like Chet kind of as a two, like Chet next to SGA is again, we talk about cheat codes. That's a cheat code. Like that it's such a great fit. And then you throw in Jalen Williams, obviously, in that team. All three of those pieces fit really well together in the same way that I feel like the Magic pieces fit really well together, because they needed a guy who dominated the ball a little bit more than somebody like Chet does, who's kind of like a guy that helps around the fringes and does everything well. So no, but I was early to the party on the Chet thing, and I'm not going to let people forget that, like, just because he missed his rookie year, that like I was telling you that this guy was going to be awesome.
Yeah, so I have money on Chet Rookie of the Year. I put that down in the summertime. So I lost all my betting money on football this year, Ceruti, but I have I have two future bets out there. Jaguars winning their division.
Okay,
and then
good there.
Holmgren winning Rookie of the Year. So hopefully by the end of that, I'll have some money that I can play around with again.
I like both of those look good. So I think I don't want to count your dollars too quick, but both of those look pretty good.
That's normally what I do. I normally count those dollars too quick. But this isn't what I was gonna choose for my earlier to the party. But this just reminds me, dude, my player of the class belt idea makes so much sense right now, because you said like the debate between Chet and Paolo moving forward is such an interesting debate. And like, I would love for that competition it's existing in my mind right now, but I would love for those players to think about like, oh, I want to come steal that belt right now. I want to prove that I'm the best in the class. Cause I do think that's important. Like the Wemby versus Chet argument right now, it's fun. But when you look at the difference, and they actually, Jason Concepcion and Shea Serrano were talking about this on Six Trophies a couple weeks ago. And Shea is so cool. Like if you email Shea, he'll just like actually like respond to you and like read your stuff. So I sent him the player of the class spreadsheet. I'm waiting for him to get back to me on it. But he's like, oh, dude,
Shea, it's out there, man. Check the inbox.
He's I saw him on the actual spreadsheet, but he hasn't gotten back to me yet. So we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, dude, I just think that with Chet, having that full year to build up his body, because he definitely looks stronger. Obviously, he's not like built, but he definitely looks stronger. His core looks a lot stronger, a little bit thicker through the shoulders. And his ability, dude, like defensively, I didn't realize how good Chet was going to be.
Oh, see, that's the thing. I knew from day one he would be. I mean, not like, again, I knew, quote unquote. I'm not like sitting here telling you I'm some like the oracle who could see the future. But I just thought day one he'd figure it out defensively. It was like whether or not he was going to be like a legit option offensively for a team, and whether or not he was going to be able to shoot well. I guess you could say like, was he going to get bodied in the paint? But like, he's not. I just don't think I don't worry about that as much in the NBA
too
anymore.
When he's a stick figure. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be a fear for all those guys early on. They'll put a little bit muscle on. They'll be,
but like other than Jokic, like and a little bit Embiid, and like I guess Şengün, like there aren't that many like back to the basket guys where I'm like, wow, he's going to get worked. Yeah, but like I just don't. I don't know. I don't worry as much about that stuff. I just think go ahead.
I'm with you on the offensive part. That was the part for me that I didn't necessarily see from Chet, but this is also part of my struggle to really invest in college basketball anymore, because it's like you're looking at Chet now in the NBA, and Gonzaga was good. I know they had Suggs was on that team, I believe, too. They had like a bunch of good players. Yeah. So I get it, but it's also like, how did you guys not win the national title with what Chet's doing in the NBA? We didn't see basically any of this offensive repertoire, from him in college, or like you saw little small bits and pieces of it, and it wasn't something that they really were able to unlock in that season at Gonzaga.
College hoops is so weird though, man. I mean, look at all those Kentucky teams that had like number one picks and they only won one title. It's just
every good guard in the NBA is from Kentucky. Tyrese Maxey, Devin
but also
Booker,
like they've got AD and Towns, and like they've had, they had a bunch of bigs too that were good that dominated, and they only won one title. I don't worry as much about that stuff. Like, and then like there were times where like Chet could be taken out of a game in college, which is a little bit worrisome. But then like again, there were concerns with Paolo being like, is he going to be the next like Julius Randle, where he's just kind of like an inefficient four who doesn't defend? And that's not. I don't think that's who he is. I don't think that's who he's going to be. But that was the concern. Like everybody has concerns, and college is such a crapshoot, man. I know like the overtime elite and the G League stuff is even more of a crapshoot, because I don't know how the heck you judge that. But college, it's just tough, man. It's tough to project guys.
Yeah, well, I'll stick with my early to the party. I just didn't mean to turn into kind of a rookie segment, but that's exactly where we're going with it here. So Jaime Jaquez, aka Wanwick, I think he's the second best or third best, depending on how we're looking at, how we want to shape these rookies in the league right now. And I've been very reluctant to tune into Heat games this year. Just a little bit of PTSD. I just like don't want to watch the Heat.
I don't like the Heat either. It's fun.
Yeah, and usually they're very frustrating to watch, but then I know at the end of the day I'm gonna feel too confident, and then they've beaten the Celtics 2 out of the last 3 times in the conference finals. So I finally tuned into a couple of Heat games this last week or so, and specifically them against the Pacers, as I'm getting ready for what will have been the Celtics and Pacers in the quarterfinals of the in-season tournament. And Jaime Jaquez, I loved him coming out of college. Celtics originally had the 24th pick before we traded for like 6 second-round picks. But I was really hoping either we would trade up to get him, or maybe he'd fall being one of those older, draft prospects. But watching him play, it's super frustrating. One, because I feel vindicated and right that like, damn, he would have been perfect guy for the Celtics, being in kind of that backup wing spot that we've been looking for somebody.
Dude, he's running their second unit to some degree.
That's what I'm saying.
They have him playing point.
This is what I'm saying. And now that he fell into the Heat's lap and is looking like he's going to be a massively impactful guy that we're probably now going to have to deal with in the playoffs, that's just a guy that I'm in on. When I'm watching Heat games reluctantly, he's a guy that I'm kind of cheering for, and it makes me a little bit annoyed that I'm cheering for somebody on the Heat.
Yeah, it's the thing that I hate about the Heat, but I also respect, is that this is what they do, man. They just find guys like this and they plug them in, and they're awesome. And then he'll probably they'll let guys like this go too. And they let Vincent go, they let Strus go, and you're like, oh, they're going to take a step back, and then they just don't, because they just have another guy in the pipeline of like random people. And half the time they're undrafted guys, but they also do hit on some guys in the draft too. So, I don't know what the ceiling is for like this Miami Heat team. Like, are they capable of what they were capable of last year, with a rookie being this important to what they're doing? I don't know, but the regular season stuff has been, it's been impressive as hell so far.
Yeah, I mean, but Jaquez is an older rookie who has huge game experience, right? So he's just coming in there and he's just being asked to do all the little things on the court. And that's kind of what the Heat needed, is just another depth piece, because although they do have guys that you can plug in, like Haywood Highsmith, who just dude, every time I watch that guy play, I'm like, if he was on the Celtics, he would get 0 minutes, and he would and when he would go in the game, he'd be terrible. Like O'Shea Brissett right now on the Celtics doesn't play for us, but I know that if he was on the Heat, he'd be awesome for the Heat.
Oh yeah,
right. It's absolutely
there's so
crazy.
many players like that too. It's like even like free agents. You're like, oh man, Kevin Love's gonna go to the Heat. Like great, now Kevin Love's gonna be good again. Cool. Or like Kyle Lowry was a perfect example. Like great, Kyle Lowry, he looks completely washed, and now the Heat somehow get something out of him. You know, another great example, Josh Richardson. Josh Richardson, I thought was terrible,
former Celtic,
terrible basketball player, and somehow like the Heat are getting good minutes out of Josh Richardson. And this is just what they do, man. And it's like I have to put aside like the fans and like the organization, because like I think the Heat culture, fan BS, like that pisses me off, to be honest with you. Like I just don't.
But then when they pull this shit, it's like I have to like not completely ignore.
But that's not the fans.
What they do.
That's Riley and that's Spoelstra. That's the front office or whatever. The fans, I can't with those guys. But the actual organization, like, yeah, what are you gonna say? They're incredible. They're the best organization probably in the league.
So I'm going to go with my early to the party. I know I talked about my player of the class belt thing, but I always just have to plug that every time that you're here, Ceruti.
One day. One day fetch will happen.
I'm so early to the party that like the party it's not even a twinkle in the dad's eye.
No one's even made a calendar invite for you. No one knows when it's happening.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with kind of a role player in the league. He's probably my favorite role player right now. Celtics playing the Pacers tonight. I don't know that this guy is going to get too much run tonight. I think he will, but Andrew Nembhard, I love Andrew Nembhard. I was big on him coming out of college. My early to the party is I think enough people like kind of know that he's good now, but I'm going to say that Andrew Nembhard is going to be looked at as one of the best contracts in the NBA at the end of next season, right? Because he's signed through 25-26. So 25-26 is a team option. He's making $2.5 million per year. And I see Nembhard as like a Derek White type player. I see him as like a Fred VanVleet type player, wasn't highly regarded coming out of college, but just does all of the little things on the court. I was actually talking with Caitlin Cooper yesterday on the pod. We were talking a little bit about Nembhard, and she agrees that the Derek White comp is a pretty good comp there because he's a connector. He's really good at kind of manipulating in the pick and roll. He's a solid shooter, and he can guard 4 positions. He's a very willing defender, very intuitive defender. So Andrew Nembhard being one of the best contracts in the NBA, early to the party on that.
I can't say I've watched like a ton of Nembhard, but like I'll go with you guys. Like I think he seems, everything that I've seen like highlight wise seems pretty good. And you're
gonna watch the game tonight?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course I will. Of course. I mean, I was trying to convince people as a soccer guy like that why this mattered, like why this is actually really cool. And some people like I think there was some people were open to it, but then there were also like the old school people were like, this is stupid. Like who cares about another trophy? I don't even know what this means. And that's why it was really cool to see like the final night of the group stage of the teams caring, and then all Twitter's blowing up. Like it was just an awesome night in the NBA that doesn't happen in November normally. And so I will say I'm going to do another early to the party. I was early to the party on the in-season tournament for sure.
Yeah, I was thinking of a way to work that in originally when I was trying to like figure out my early to the party, late to the party stuff, because I was probably somewhere in the middle where I was like, there's no reason not to do this. Like there's no downside to it. I don't think I was all the way in like it's going to be awesome, but I was like, why not try it? It could be awesome. And like you said, that last night, and I think for me, this is the thing that as we got into the in-season tournament where I was like, if the players care, then me as a fan, I'm going to care because then it's going to actually feel like it matters and it means more. And the teams and players clearly on that last night when Joe Mazzulla is sending out a hack-a-drumming up 30 with 7.5 minutes
Billy
left.
Donovan is like confused somehow. I'm like, what's going on here? Because I'm watching that game because obviously it meant a lot. And like, when Mazzulla has to tell Billy Donovan, like, hey, we're doing this. And like, yeah, no shit, man. Like, the coach of the other team should know what's going on. Plus, it was the Bulls, so who cares?
Hey, weirder in-game coach moment. The Pop grabbing the microphone or Mazzulla having to explain to Billy Donovan?
Definitely Pop, because that was such a.
Where'd you fall on that? What were your thoughts on that move by Pop?
I just think Pop is overall kind of like a grandstander, and I'm not taking. He's a great coach, obviously. Won a bunch of championships, and I think Wemby landed in a great spot for him to develop with Pop. But he does stuff like this that I think is like incredibly cringeworthy. And I sort of hate it. And I thought this was such a weird thing, especially when he was kind of one of the, like maybe the main reason that Kawhi wanted out because he didn't want to deal with you anymore, dude. And I'm not defending Kawhi at all, really, but it's just like I just thought it was incredibly weird. And I hate when guys like think that they're like the grandfather of the NBA. They could just I could do this. Like you're also a huge asshole in sideline interviews all the time. So like we want to be nice to a player here, but we're not going to be nice to sideline reporters. We're going to be a total ass. Like I just don't like the consistency from Pop overall, really.
So I'm sure people looked into this, but how many times in NBA history has a coach grabbed the in-game microphone and made an announcement over the PA?
Like, it happens in like high school and maybe college. In a professional sports league, that's just it's embarrassing.
It's so weird. I think the only time I saw that happen, Will, was in high school when our center scored 1,000 points and like stopped the game to make an announcement and like give him flowers on the court.
Yeah, it's and the thing was, and maybe you guys think this, maybe you don't. The booing wasn't that loud. Like I didn't think it was like that. Like it wasn't. Like, I mean, obviously we're used to like Celtics games and like the Celtics, like Celtics fans versus Kyrie animosity.
Yeah,
certainly. Yeah, exactly. Me and Greg live in Austin. We've been to a bunch of Spurs games. Like it's a good fan base. And like listening to that clip, I was like, this booing is the most normal thing a fan base can do at a game when a former star player returns that left on kind of like uneven terms. Like it was just really weird to see Pop go that route because it didn't seem like it was out of bounds at all to me.
Yeah, I just thought it, what the kids say, just cringeworthy. It was incredibly cringeworthy.
That's definitely a way to
I feel weird talking about it. Yeah.
It does kind of make you feel weird. All right, let's move on to late to the party. All right, so late to the party is just something that you were reluctant to show up at the party. You finally show up and you're there, and now the vibes are good, and you're looking around. You're like, I should have come to this party a little bit earlier.
So I'll preface this by saying I still don't even know that I'm not even late to I don't even know if I'm at the party yet or if I acknowledge the party exists. It currently exists, but I don't know that it will exist come playoff time. But I think I'll give credit right now to the Minnesota Timberwolves. There was a
That's
lot.
Literally the same one that I have. So let's dig in on this.
Good. There was a lot of talk before the season about them being a good regular season team. And again, like the regular season and whether or not I think they're actually a team that can win a title are two very different things. I think they're a good regular season team right now. Congrats. Go Bears working out. But again, we've seen this film before, to quote Taylor Swift. And we've also kind of seen this film before with or at least Karl Anthony Towns being in this style of a team, and now he's having to do less now, obviously with Ant kind of taking the reins as the best player in the team. But I still don't buy them as a like legit finals contender, but I need to give them credit. I was late to the party of saying that they would actually be a very good and one of the best regular season teams in the league.
Yeah, so I'll jump in here because, like I said, I had this exact written down. And I was same way that you weren't sure how to word this as to how it connects. I kind of felt that way. So for me, it was a T-Wolves are for real / Ant-Man is that dude. Like Anthony Edwards is that dude. Yeah. I was probably slightly late too. Like I was almost convinced that I think before last year was when I think the Adam Sandler Hustle movie came out, and he was awesome. He was electric in that movie. And I felt like after everyone really enjoyed him in that role, everyone was like, oh, he's like top 12. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy's had like a year and a half of solid productivity. Like he's going to be good. Like I never thought that he was going to be bad, but all of a sudden I thought he got elevated to a level just that he wasn't quite at. And then you saw him, in FIBA over the summer where he was clearly the number one guy. And if there is going to be anyone from that team that goes to the next Olympic team, like him and Halliburton seemed like the two most likely guys that would continue
Paolo,
on.
Got him out.
And Paolo, you need him as a small ball 5. He was great, actually. So that, he is seeming like he's making that kind of fringe MVP type jump, and that there is actually, this is one part that I would always get a little annoyed is like, is he the best USA player? And I feel like Tatum gets disrespected in that conversation as just being completely looked over. Like I feel like he's always like 3rd or 4th, and I'm like, Tatum's been all NBA first team 2 years in a row, top 5 MVP 2 years in a row, and was basically the last Olympic team. It felt like he was the successor to Kevin Durant on that team. So I always think it's weird that Tatum's kind of an afterthought, and Ant was already, even before FIBA, being brought up in that combo. But I think it's undeniable now that Ant is here, and like he's here in like the, all right, can we give him a full-time superstar label? Like that's the next like conversation.
I'll add this too, because I was late to the party on like fully accepting that Ant was that dude. Like I knew he was really good, and like I think I just thought we got a little ahead of ourselves last year. Like there were moments and things, but I thought he was still like kind of pretty far away, and a little bit, there was just like weird moments where I'd be like, I don't know if he quite has like I mean, the people that he was being compared to were insane. Like
Yeah.
it was like, oh, he's got like Jordan qualities. I'm like, can we just settle down a little bit? And I still think
he's got the takeover gene, but I don't necessarily know that he's got like the consistency, efficiency gene yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but like if you're saying like guys that aren't scared, like he's at the top of that list. So I guess there is something to be said for that. So I guess that I still don't believe in Karl Anthony Towns. I still don't believe in playoff Gobert. So
you're on the right show to not believe in Karl Anthony Towns.
So if you're telling me that Ant is capable of carrying this team, then I think I think to like the finals, that I think that's too far. Then I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. But I'll give them credit. They are way better, especially defensively, than I thought they would be.
Quick question for you, Will. Were you making the argument that Hustle did for Anthony Edwards what 8 Mile did for Eminem?
I mean, to a degree. I mean, Eminem, I think, already kind of had a standing. Like, I feel like Anthony Edwards went from like nice young player to all of a sudden, like I said, he was on like every NBA on TNT, ESPN poster, and it's like Embiid, Durant, LeBron, and Anthony Edwards all of a sudden was in there after Hustle. And I was like, all right, this is a little premature, guys. He's on the Timberwolves with Karl Anthony Towns. Like, what are we doing here? Why is he in this level yet? So I don't know if it's the same as
so this is like if 8 Mile had come out in like 99 versus when it actually came out.
Something like that, probably. Okay. Exactly. Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay, so I'm actually late to the party on Rudy Gobert. I'm eating a bit of crow on Rudy Gobert here. By
the way, we did not plan this to be the first segment was rookies, second segment is all Wolves. This is completely coincidental.
So I was gonna go Robert Covington, but I decided I'm actually not at that party. Rudy Gobert. He looks great on defense this year. Last year, I thought he looked washed. I thought he couldn't hang on the perimeter at all. Any big that had some sort of skill, I felt like would take advantage of Gobert, and he's doing a good job. I think he had some possessions on Chet, your boy Chet, earlier this year. He actually played great defense on Porzingis. He moved his feet well, blocked his shot a few times, and Gobert being a pairing with Anthony Edwards and Karl Towns, it's a whole different conversation. But I think the Gobert and Edwards duo is something that I was late to the party on, but I'm here. I'm at the party, and I with McDaniels, I'm a big McDaniels guy. I feel like I was early to the party on McDaniels in his career. I just think that the way that they're built, if Towns is able to give them something and not be a complete zero on defense, it seems like by all accounts that he's been better on defense this year. When he played the Celtics, he was the worst player on the court. So I don't know if that's going to continue, but Rudy Gobert, man, I'm coming around on him. I think that he's actually working out well in Minnesota, and that trade doesn't look like the worst trade in NBA history anymore.
I still think it's a terrible trade.
It still looks bad.
I just don't think they're capable of winning a title with Rudy Gobert. So like, I just think that trade itself is a bad trade, no matter like how many good regular season. If they get the 1 seed, it still doesn't
Rudy,
matter.
when the Bar's worst trade in NBA history, like there's like a little bit more wiggle room there.
I mean, it's still, I don't know, man. I still think it has a chance to be like one of the worst trades ever. Like it was one of the most drastic overpays of all time. And whether or not like he's good or not, like obviously he's very good this year. It's still, I mean, he'd have to play at a close to and I know there are like defensive metrics and nerds who will tell you that he is like an MVP type candidate. Like if we're talking regular season defensive contributions, I've just never really fully bought into that. I think this trade's a disaster, like pretty much no matter what, because I just don't think they're capable of winning a title as is.
So they have to win a title for that trade to be worth it.
With what they gave up. Yeah, definitely. I mean, just because it was that colossal. And I mean, with Gobert, like even going back to Utah, he's always been good in the regular season. Like that's never been the issue, right? So for me, this gets back to like where we started with this when, Ceruti, you were talking about like, I'm kind of at the party. I'm kind of late to the party on the Wolves being a good regular season team, but like all that matters is what Towns and Gobert and what that looks like when you have to match up with a team for a week and a half, 2 weeks straight. And can that still hold up and last? Or what does that look like? Are they able to, make the adjustment if they need that? Oh, hey, this is the series where Cat, you're actually going to be on the bench the last 6 minutes because Gobert makes more sense as our big man, or vice versa. Or like, what does that look like? Because both of those guys have just horrible track records in the playoffs. So I think until that point, especially with Gobert, who's also not one of my least favorite players in the NBA, like it's going to be hard for me to be like, yeah, like, because he has been good in the regular season, but he's done that before, but it's the postseason where it really matters for him.
Yep. Not to say like none of this impresses me, but I just like wake me up when we get to May. I I don't particularly care that he's looking like his old self. Like, that's cool. That's what you paid for.
Yeah.
But like, I still didn't like that guy in Utah. So
Exactly.
and you gave up like $1 billion first-round picks for him. So.
Yeah, and one more thing on Gobert, like I agree the regular season stuff versus the postseason stuff, there's a pretty stark contrast there. But even when the Celtics would play Utah, when Gobert was on there, I felt like we could always take advantage of him. We just spread the floor and then we were able to run him off the court, and he was always terrible against the Celtics. So the fact that he was able to hang the last time we played the Celtics and make a big difference, I think that was when I was like, oh man, this is the first time I've actually seen Rudy Gobert play well against the Celtics. All right. So it sounds like the party in Minnesota is something that's still kind of up in the air. We all have invitations to it. We're not sure if we're showing up. Good to know. Skipping the party. What are we all skipping the party on? Skipping the party is just other people are, at this party and you're just not buying it.
This might be like a little bit of this might not fully apply, but I'm going to go here anyway. So a couple weeks ago, I think it was maybe like 2 weeks into the season, I, on Ryan's pod, basically declared that I thought the Halliburton Kings Sabonis trade, as we keep going further into the future, is going to look more and more like a disaster for the Kings because of how good I think Halliburton is. And I still believe that that's true. And I know De'Aaron Fox has played really well, and I know Sabonis has been really good too. And I like all three of these players. But I still really believe that Halliburton is like the most special guy. Like if you like of all three of those guys that were like involved or could have been traded or were traded, like I think Halliburton is the guy that I would want for the next 10 years of any of them, period. And I got so much backlash from Kings fans. And now whenever De'Aaron Fox like puts up numbers, which is a lot because he's really good, I'll get the tweet of me from StatMuse basically saying, he's got 35, 10, and 7 or something. I don't dislike De'Aaron Fox. I'm just saying that I think Halliburton is going to be better, and you would rather have Halliburton long term than making that trade or even keeping Fox if I'm taking point guards. But I've completely I don't want any part of this conversation anymore. Like I'm out. It's not fun for me. So I do not want to be at the party of debating this Kings trade anymore because everybody was happy. Like I think everybody is a winner here, but I think ultimately like when you're the Pacers, you got a guy who I think in the future could be a first team All NBA guard or a potential like top 5 MVP guy. I don't think Fox is at that level, and Sabonis certainly isn't at that level. But I'm tired of arguing about it because Kings fans are so mad at me about it, and they tweet at me all the time about Fox's stats. So I'm done. I don't want to be at this party. I'm good.
I mean, I think Halliburton certainly looks like that guy. And I think it was Bill's podcast where he was already saying, can he be the greatest Pacer of all time?
Yeah.
And it sounded kind of crazy, but at the same time, like the Pacers don't have a super long list of, of guys that he would have to surpass. And if he ends up being, I mean, like you said, he seems like he's going to be, I know they changed the all NBA rule, so whatever he ends up being, but he seems like he's certainly going to be in that mix for all NBA here going forward. So I think that's a good one because you're right. Like when you look at it long term, like Sacramento, and you talked about earlier on the podcast, like if Orlando had made the in-season tournament, I got to change all my Vegas plans. This is the biggest moment in decades. Like the Kings getting back to the playoffs, they needed that just for a course correction of their entire organization for how badly it's been, that potentially that within itself is enough of a win. But when you look back in 10 years, if that run, and they look still good this year, so maybe it goes another couple of years, but they never really quite get there, maybe that's still worth it. But if Halliburton and the Pacers in 3 years are at the top of the Eastern Conference and he's first team, second team, all NBA, it's going to be hard not to look at that and live with like a little bit of regret, little bit like Trae Young for Luka. Different, but like both teams kind of got something good, but obviously you'd rather be on the Luka side, you'd rather be on the Hallie side than what you ended up with for those other teams.
Like if you wanted to trade Halliburton today, they would laugh at you if you offered Sabonis straight up for him. They would laugh at you. So like that, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the Fox and Halliburton and Ceruti, how much time do you have with us? I just want to make sure we get to
I got enough time. We're good. Yep.
Okay. So the Fox and Halliburton debate right now, the way that they play, like I love both players, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of like when you look at the way Embiid plays versus the way Jokic plays. Like Jokic just has this really special quality that makes all of his teammates better, and Embiid is just kind of a force on his own. So I think although it's kind of a different level, and I wouldn't say the Fox to Embiid analogy is 1-to-1 there, but it's pretty close just in terms of like what Halliburton offers on the court is a way to elevate every single player on his team. And there are very few players in the NBA that are capable of doing that. All right, Will, what are you skipping the party on?
So for mine, I guess it's almost more I'm skipping a funeral than a party. I'm not ready to bury the Golden State Warriors yet.
Okay.
I feel like everyone's just ready to go in, and like I get it. Like it hasn't looked great. I've tuned into their games. I mean, Steph Curry is probably my favorite non-Celtic player, so it's just addicting. Every time they're on TV, I've tried to catch them or throw them on League Pass, but he's still amazing. And the roster, like Klay, I'm super worried about. I love Klay Thompson. I don't know if that's going to bounce back. I hope it does, just because I like the guy, but I don't know where that's at. Your boy Greg, Andrew Wiggins, I don't know necessarily where he's at, but I just, until this team fully collapses, like I'll just be late to burying them. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I think when you look at, they do have pieces to go make a move, whether that they go get Siakam, and they can do that without making those monumental, core changes, or maybe they do need to do that, and that is the shakeup they need. So I think I just am not going to be ready to, grab my shovel and bury them until I'm too late, until they're basically already there and I'm showing up at the funeral, leaving some flowers and walking away. Fine, I'll do that, but I don't think I'm ready to bury them just yet.
I'm with you. It doesn't look good. I'll tell you that right now.
It's why it's hard to make too much of a defense case. Wiggins, other than just they are who they've been.
Wiggins is a mess, and it kind of feels like, unfortunately, a couple years ago against your boys, like that was like an out of body experience for him. Wiggins. I'm happy for him, but it just doesn't seem like that's who he really is as a player. And then they obviously have had a lot of high profile sort of like draft mistakes as well. One of which being Wiseman. Another one being Kuminga over Franz, which I thank them for.
Yeah.
And, like Curry, it kind of feels like Steph kind of feels like those old LeBron teams, like on the Cavs, where he's just on an island, doesn't like have any help and everything. And like when he's on the bench for like 2 minutes, they just like lose 10 points, like that's what it feels like. And that it's crazy because they were such a good organization for such a long time. And clearly Klay is not the same. And I don't know what you do with him, because I certainly, he's going to want to get paid, and I don't know how you pay him, but that's a guy that's going to have a statue out in the front of the arena in however many years. And Draymond, I just don't know that you can count on Draymond as that guy, as the consistent like number 2 going forward. So as much as I kind of like think it's stupid and as bad as he's been, like I think in some ways they kind of miss like Jordan Poole's juice a little bit. Like they just need somebody else to give him some juice, and he's so detrimental to everything that they do that he's probably not the right example of that. But they just don't have any guys like anymore. So I'm not going to write off like the Clays and the Draymonds and certainly Steph again, but it's really bleak right now. But I'm with you. I'm not going to jump off that train until like it's basically already crashed.
They need a Cole Anthony.
That's what they could have used the LaMelo Ball like in the draft. They could use a guy like that, to help out with some of the playmaking and scoring.
They could have used Tyrese Halliburton.
Could have used Tyrese Halliburton. They probably could. The amount of teams that could have traded for Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, like the Sixers could have had Halliburton.
Dude, that's what I was thinking when you were talking earlier. Is imagine if because that was one of the rumor deals, like Ben Simmons, for you get healed.
Yeah, so they said he's more one of James Harden.
Imagine if you had that with Embiid and Maxey right now. Like, good God.
Yeah, you could argue it's the best team in the East. Yeah.
So when you were talking about the Warriors, had me thinking, the Magic needs some shooting. Is there a deal out there? Would you be interested in getting Klay? What would it take?
No, because I wouldn't. I've been criticized for this a lot, because like Bill always asks me like, "Well, the Magic should trade for Donovan Mitchell, or the Magic should trade for like so and so," and I always just kind of say no, because I just think the price is usually too high. And maybe I was being dumb in the past, but I wouldn't change anything about this team right now. The one move I was interested in the Magic potentially making, and I don't know how it really works now, because like I don't know who would be in that deal. You're certainly not putting Suggs in that deal, but is Buddy Hield? Speaking of the Pacers, like if you want like a big shooter. Which they certainly need, but I don't know. You probably have to trade like Fultz, but I don't know why would the Pacers want Fultz? I don't really know. Because you're not trading Cole. Isaac? I would not trade. I don't think I would trade Isaac. No, I love that dude. This team's identity is like being menacing defensively, and like I think he's a part of that. So you could always get shooting in the offseason. Like Ingles has actually been a pretty good shooter recently. So I don't know. But so to answer your question, I would not make the Klay trade now, because I just think he's probably my favorite player of the last decade, but I just think it's done, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm out on the Warriors. I didn't think they were going to be good before the season, so I'm already at that funeral. I'm giving the eulogy. All right, I'm skipping the party on another contender, quote unquote, in the league, Milwaukee Bucks. I don't buy it. I don't think that Chris Middleton is going to be able to give them enough of what they need. Relying right now, Brook Lopez is their third best player. And if you gave me the Celtics and you said, hey, Al Horford is now going to have to be your third best player, I'd be like, okay, we're not winning a title. That's just the way it is. And I think that with Brook Lopez needing to be elevated into the number 3 role versus number 4, number 5 role, which is what he should be at this point in his career and pretty much at any point in his career, I just don't think that they, even with the top level talent that they have, I don't think they're championship level, especially when they're probably going to have to go through the Celtics and they don't match up well with the Celtics. So I'm out on the Bucks as making it out of the East. And I think that they're probably, they got bounced in the first round last year, something like that. A great playoff last year, but I don't think they're going to be good in the playoffs this year. I know that the crunch time numbers are great with Dame and everything, and they're always going to have that to go to, but I don't think they're winning a title this year. I don't think it's going to be close.
I'm with you. I think there's like major reasons for concern, and thank God for them. Giannis signed an extension, but that team is just weird, man. You had to make the trade, and it sucks for them that like Drew ends up going to the Celtics, which is like kind of the worst case scenario. But I still think you have to make that trade for Dame either way. But it doesn't really mask all of the problems that they have. Yeah, Middleton is he's in like the Clay territory of like, is he just done? Like, is that it? And that sucks. You're right. Lopez, like, can you really count on him this much? And then they've always been sort of thin on the bench. So you're asking Dame and Giannis, who have a lot of flaws, not necessarily together on the offensive side, but certainly defensively with Dame. Like, you're asking them to do a lot of lifting. And I don't know what other moves there are to make on this roster.
They have no more moves. They don't have any assets to trade. They don't have any.
It'll be the buyout market again.
Yes,
right?
The buyout, which really how we've seen this time after time. We record multiple podcasts per week for a living, so at times you have to fill content, and they're like, "What about this guy?" And
buyout guys almost
too, right? Like buyout guys almost never make
Dwight Howard. Is Dwight Howard back now?
Yeah. Taiwan's got him on an early release program. Can he get back to the NBA in time? So like I'm with you. And I think it's just the Middleton thing. Cause like each time, even if I'm not watching the Bucks game, I'll go check the box score. How long is this guy going to be on a minutes restriction for? We're a quarter of the way into the season.
Well, if I'm them, I don't blame them. I don't even know. I play him the minimum amount just to get him to the playoffs. Cause without him, they have zero chance.
Yeah, and it's just I just think Chris Middleton, it's whether or not he comes full circle is their only chance to really get back into that. Like I saw somebody say that this is the most like uneven 13-6 start I've ever seen. Like I don't feel good about this 13-6 start. Like there shouldn't be anything wrong, but it just doesn't feel like they have enough juice to make it happen. So
I'm with you.
So we'll see what happens there. Ceruti, you get time for a really quick life advice?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and hit that. All right, so Steve, you're one of the, and I don't know why I just switched it up from Ceruti to Steve right there. Pull the Ryan on there.
Yeah.
But you're usually one of the stars of life advice with you, Kyle, and Ryan. And obviously you guys are always dishing out great advice. But I started to wonder, no one's able to give you guys any advice, and I'm sure you guys have your own problems within your life. So Greg and I are going to try and give you this gift. I don't know. We'll see if it's a gift. That's generous of me to even say that, because this could be horrible advice. But I want to give you the chance to ask us a question, and we're going to try to give you some life advice here.
I was trying to figure out what I needed advice on, or what like in my life has been weird recently. And I think I have a good one, because this is something that came up on the pod like inadvertently, I think late last week. And it's when your mom wants to cook something that you don't want to eat. And my mom's a really good cook. She's incredible. She's an Italian mother. She's made great dishes and pastas and whatever. Like every holiday, there's like way too much food. There's like 1,000 appetizers. We have lasagna as an appetizer on Christmas and Easter. So like we're eating good. But so my daughter's first birthday was the end of October. And my mom, obviously wants to make some food or whatever, blah, blah. And she's like, all right, what if I make deviled eggs? Like I'll make deviled eggs. and I was like, who eats deviled eggs? They're disgusting. I feel like no one under 50 eats deviled eggs. So I didn't really know the proper way to tell my mom, like, no, you don't make this. Like, I don't like this. This is disgusting. So I said to her, I was like, Mom, I just don't think anybody at the party is going to want to eat deviled eggs. And I heard from so many guys being like, 1, you're an idiot. Let your mom cook whatever she wants. And 2, deviled eggs are awesome. So I guess I need some life advice of like, how do you politely tell your mom, who's a great cook, that you might not want to eat something that she wants to make? And am I wrong about deviled eggs? Like, I think they're one of the most disgusting appetizers there is, but maybe I'm in the minority. I don't know.
There's always somebody at the party that likes deviled eggs. It's not me. I have eaten deviled eggs before, but whenever they're there, I always we had a work holiday party for Thanksgiving, and somebody brought deviled eggs, and there was a few people that just immediately beelined towards the deviled eggs.
They
right?
stink though. They stink, and they when you eat them, you stink. It's not a pleasant experience for anyone at the party.
And it's just not the optics of eating deviled eggs. It's just gross. It's kind of gross looking.
Yep.
But I think what I would probably do, I'm a big proponent of asking the question, so oh, you want to make deviled eggs? So mom, are some of your friends showing up at the party? Is there someone specific that you're making these deviled eggs for, just to see, kind of start planting that seed that maybe deviled eggs aren't for this demographic. Like you just straight up said, I don't know if anyone's going to eat deviled eggs at this party. So I probably wouldn't.
Which was really a you thing. You just didn't want deviled eggs at the party.
Well, no, I mean, I do know at the I don't know. I think they would have been on a platter and make one or two of them would have been eaten. That's about it. Just knowing the vibes of what this party was going to be like. So I was also trying to save her from I wanted her to make something that people were going to eat. I'm trying to help you out. So I had her make. She ended up making pigs in a blanket, which were a massive hit because they're delicious and they're a great appetizer. And I felt like I helped her out inadvertently, but maybe I didn't handle it as eloquently as I could have.
Will, what are your thoughts?
So let me answer the second question first. I actually do like deviled eggs. I think deviled eggs are actually pretty tasty. I do. And I will say, pigs in a blanket are greater than deviled eggs for sure. So I'm with you on that. But so it was funny when I was first dating my now fiance. This is 5+ years ago. I don't even know how this happened, but randomly we must have been at a couple parties where because no one eating deviled eggs, if you're not at a gathering, is a fucking bananas move. If you're not at a large party, there's no other, you should never just be eating deviled eggs.
Yeah, you have a Tupperware thing full of deviled eggs. You just
exactly.
Watching the in-season tournament.
Yeah. So we must have been at a couple events, and I didn't even notice that I was just getting a small plate, and I must have got deviled eggs. And early on in our relationship, I remember she brought deviled eggs to something that I thought was why'd you bring deviled eggs? She's like, well, it's your favorite thing. I was like, what are you talking about?
Oh, that's cute. All right.
And so, but it was so strange that we just happened to be at an event. So she thought for the first 2 months that oh man, this guy really likes deviled eggs. It's one of his favorite foods. And I was very confused by that. But I do like deviled eggs. So I think it's an okay choice. But as far as not getting your mom to make it, I feel and you said this was a kid's birthday party.
Yep.
So I'm assuming there's other parents, other kids that are there. I feel like you can always, even if it's a little bit of a white lie, lean into an allergy maybe or something that a friend that has one, or if maybe someone else is pregnant, they're oh, I don't know, because you said they do have a certain smell. So the smell is we want to make sure everyone's copacetic here. I think that we might need to go with a less stinky option.
I think that's a great call. Those are all probably better than what the route that I took.
No, that's actually really good advice. Well, the smell of the eggs, and what's interesting to me is deviled eggs, they're just hard boiled eggs, right? And they've just been, you scoop out the yolk and you just replace it with a paste,
mayo and spices or whatever.
Put a little paprika on top.
So I feel hard boiled eggs in general, you're probably not. That's not something that you kind of bring out into public too often. Maybe it's part of a salad, but I feel that's more of an at-home meal. And it's weird that deviled eggs, people have, maybe it's the hard-boiled egg people were how can we figure out a way to get hard-boiled eggs at a party?
Yeah, Big Egg was hey, we got to figure out a way to not just be a breakfast food here. We got or baked.
We've got a lot of extra eggs. How do we get them on a tray that we can then sell in stores as a platter that people are going to bring to parties? So there we go. Maybe we've solved the big egg industry mystery of how deviled eggs became so popular. But well, Ceruti, as always, man, we appreciate you coming by. Hopefully this was some good advice. I know this is kind of retroactive advice for future parties. Hopefully this will be helpful. I know you're heading out to Vegas for the in-season tournament. Just in case we have anybody listening that's going to be in Vegas, as obviously the Celtics, we'll know by the time that this podcast is up whether the Celtics are going to be in Vegas as well. Is there still tickets available to any of the Bill Simmons, Ryan? What's going on that maybe if someone's going, they can look out for you in Vegas?
I think it is sold out. It's at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club, which is where we had Ryan's too last month around the F1 race. I think it is sold out. But if you really are dying to go and you're going to be there, just shoot me a DM. I'll see if there's anything we can do. I can't promise you anything, but I could always see if we got any standby tickets ready to go.
And Ceruti, quick advice for everybody that's going to be in Vegas: if they see you, do they approach you? Do they not approach you? How do you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I don't mind it at all. I got approached this. I mean, again, my wife always jokes like that. I'm like the lowest of the low, like a Z-list celebrity, like whatever the lowest of the low is.
No,
But
where's Z-list celebrities?
But the weirdest thing that somebody once approached me in London at the train station. I want to say it was like outside of like this Harry Potter store. Anyway, that's not even relevant, but it was in
Every
London.
place in London looks like a Harry Potter store.
That's also true, but it was like I think it was like the platinum or the platform 9 3/4 like area or whatever. Okay. And somebody came up to me in London and was like, "Are you Ceruti?" And I was like, "Yeah." Yeah, he's like, "Oh, big fan of the show, thanks." And I was like, "Wow, this is so like we're I guess we're international now." So that was the coolest. So I'm always very pro. Like Ryan and I've talked about this like. And Ryan's, it's probably more appropriate with Ryan. Like, don't linger for like 5 minutes and like take up a ton of his time. But like, yeah, always go up and say what's up. Like, it's great to hear that people like the show. And
I remember one of the life advice was the guy like hanging around the gardening shop or something. Or
yes,
it was that was a bananas move just to say hi, like and pretend that you're going to buy
and then not buy flowers.
And then not buy anything.
You got to buy a flower at that point. Like you can't. They don't. You're doing the flower shop guy a disservice.
Yeah,
so
buy some
if you're gonna do that, you got to
right?
buy one rose and then I don't know, figure it out, man. Like,
is it still cool for you when people say hi, like when they recognize?
Oh yeah, always, definitely. Yeah, it's
I got recognized by a TSA agent one time. Shout out to our guy John McGoldrick who listened to the pod, and he like looked at my ID and he was like, "Oh wait, like from the podcast?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude."
Yeah, let's go. There you go. No, it's never like again, like I think it's because we are at lower levels of fame. Like when I'm sure if you're somebody who's like an A or B list, and it probably gets a little annoying because you can't go to Whole Foods like in peace. But no, I never mind. I think it's awesome.
All right. Well, if you guys are listening out there and you're going to be in Vegas for the in-season tournament, number one, that means the Celtics have advanced. Number two, you see our guy Ceruti out there. Don't be bashful. Go say what's up. And Ceruti, thank you for joining us here, man. That's going to do it for this episode of Green with Envy. Greg, what are we going to hear on the way out here?
Black Sheep Optimist, get this high. Peace, everybody.
Peace, y'all.